After Episode 2 of Dune Prophecy, we have several questions to ask ourselves. Who is Nazir, the woman examining Kasha's body? Why is Desmon unaffected by the voice? What is the Agony? Has Laila survived her trial? What importance does this hold for the future of the Sisterhood? What is the basis for the rebellion against the Emperor? And last but not least, what secrets are hidden in the series opening? Let's talk about all of this and much more in this video analysis of Episode 2 of Dune Prophecy. Roll the intro. Let's go. Greetings, everyone. This is your host, Pack Boy. How are you all doing? I hope you're well, comfortable, and ready for my analysis of Dune Prophecy and its second episode, titled Two Wolves. This title is a clear and absolute reference to Valya Harkonnen and Desmon Hart. Like two wolves, are vying for their prey, the Emperor Haviko Carino, in a ferocious and powerful struggle. The visuals of this series are absolutely stunning. I am pleasantly surprised by the artistic work and special effects put into each episode. The spaceport of Seleucia Secundus looks magnificent, and the pathway for the Space Guild's interstellar travel is breathtaking. In general, I believe the series has a remarkable attention to detail that stands out and is something I personally value highly. Thankfully, the narrative has improved significantly as well. This episode was much better than the previous one on every level. The mystery surrounding Desmon continues to grow, and the small plot twists in the episode have pleasantly surprised me. There were quite a few of them. But before diving into the details, we absolutely must talk about the series opening. Its visual composition impressed me greatly, although I did find myself missing a more catchy musical theme. Even so, it has plenty of personality and is packed with references. The intro opens with a shot of a hand forming the classic signals used by the Sisterhood to communicate secretly, unseen by others. This, of course, is part of their training to manipulate everything from the shadows, one of the main premises of this story. We then see the tip of a blood-stained knife, a clear reference to the death of Dorothea at the hands of Valya in the first episode. I say this because the next shot shows a drop of blood falling onto one of the Sisterhood's murals, which is filled with water, a liquid closely tied to the use of the voice and, above all, to destiny. Remember, a single stone in a calm lake creates ripples that disturb the water's surface, an allegory for destiny and how the Sisterhood seeks to manipulate these waters to their advantage. Additionally, the blood shows us how the Sisterhood was formed through the blood of others, in this case, Dorothea's blood. That destiny was the wedding between the Carinos and the Riches, which, as we know, ended in tragedy due to Desmon Hart. The fruit from the wedding is the next thing we see in the intro, a part of the Bene Gesserit's grand plan. Afterward, we see Inez in the same position and perspective as in the pre-wedding ceremony from the first episode, just before transitioning to the throne of Seleucia Secundus, where Haviko Carino rules the galaxy. If you look closely, the actor's name, Mark Strong, appears at this very moment. We then get a wide view of the Emperor's palace on Seleucia Secundus. Its architecture is heavily reminiscent of the Roman Colosseum, surrounded by Tuscan cypresses. I say it's very Roman because, when you think about it, this story introduces us to many emperors, much like ancient Rome. After this, we see a DNA strand with orange spice particles connecting us to the great genetic breeding program of Reverend Mother Raquella, whose fate, as we know, is tied to Arrakis and Paul Atreides. As you know, the Sisterhood's ultimate goal throughout its history has been to create the Kwisatz Haderach. The planet shown here is likely Lankaville, which, after being displayed, reveals a cold and snowy world filled with dead whales, their flesh stripped away. These whales, native to Lankaville, are known as Beyondaks. Their skin, bones, and oil are used by the Harkonnens, who, as I mentioned in my first analysis, were exiled to this planet after the war against the machines. The planet could also be Valak 9, which we know serves as the headquarters of the Bene Gesserit during this time. But since the DNA strand surrounds it, I prefer to think it refers to Valya herself, as Lankaville is her birthplace and she currently leads the Sisterhood. Next, we see the Bene Gesserit school with its two characteristic pillars featuring a group of sisters in the center. Reverend Mother Raquella and the painting we've seen repeatedly in the series appear to be viewed through some sort of digital program, as if a machine were studying the order. Afterward, we see Valia bathed in a blinding ray of light, standing behind it as the new leader of the Bene Gesserit, guiding them toward their glorious purpose. Then comes the Rossack poison, which, after preparation, takes on its characteristic bluish hue. This substance allows the unlocking of genetic memory for those capable of processing it. A drop falls into an eye, symbolizing how, to gain complete knowledge of your ancestors, you must look toward both the future and the past. This is because eyes play a crucial role in the series and its story. When receiving the poison, one's genetic memory somehow explodes and everything is processed at a molecular level, a feat not everyone can achieve, at least not in this era. This leads us to a Bene Gesserit sister with her characteristic veil, seen sharing her existence with the rest of her sisters who are part of her past and legacy. Finally, we see what appears to be Gamma Waping, which is it's the yellow star that hosts 7 planets, among which is Seleucia Secundus. And you may wonder, why this sun and not any other? Precisely because of the bull we see after this sun. Bulls are a native species of Seleucia Secundus, a planet that at this time had not yet been ravaged by the atomic catastrophe that would leave it barren and gray, turning it into a prison planet and the training ground for the Sardaukar. This bull appeared several times in the first Dune movie, as it was the bull that killed Paul Atreides' grandfather, Paul Atreides, a daring man who loved bullfighting and ultimately was gored by the bull. Its head now hangs on the wall of the palace on Caladan, home of the Atreides, but the reference is there and the planet is what it is. So far, we haven't seen any bulls in the series, though I imagine we will at some point. Behind the bull, we see the magnificent sand dunes of Arrakis, a planet whose spice is vital to controlling the galaxy due to its immense value. This connects to the Ring of Reverend Mother Rakella, seen in the first episode, which is part of the symbolic power so central to Dune. Next, we see the famous Gum Jabbar, the enemy of the High Hand, a poisoned needle that is lethal. It is used for the box test, which reveals the true nature of the one who puts their hand inside it. We saw this with Paul Atreides and in Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen. Following this, we see the iconic Shai-Hulud, the sandworm of Arrakis. As we know, it produces the coveted spice, which is vital to the planet's ecosystem. Finally, we see a blue eye, a symbol of vision, the ability to see what lies ahead and beyond. It represents the epicenter of knowledge, undoubtedly tied to the sandworm's own essence. Because the worm produces spice, the spice allows you to connect with your ancestors and see beyond your own understanding. The blue color confirms that someone has reached this profound state that very few achieve. All of this is connected to the Bene Gesserit and their power. Valia Harkonnen continues to be one of the best characters in the series for me, not just because of her determination, control, and personality, but also for the aura she exudes, which I find captivating. Emily Watson has delivered an outstanding performance in this episode, which I enjoyed far more than the previous one. In every scene, the respect her character commands is immense, especially as she struggles to contain her emotions, particularly at the end with Desmon. The school receives a visit from Nazir, a former student of the Sisterhood who is now a Suck Doctor. We can tell this not only from the metallic ring that ties her hair, but also from the diamond-shaped tattoo on her forehead. Suck Doctors emerged after the Great War against the machines, and their advanced knowledge became highly valued by humanity. Devoted to healing any ailment, their expertise centered on studying human physiology to maximize their ability to cure others. All Suck Doctors were trained under the Imperial Conditioning Program, a psychotherapeutic technique developed by the Suck School to prevent any of its doctors from betraying a patient or taking a life. They typically worked for the wealthiest families and organizations given their expensive services. Thanks to their training, it made them highly sought after by the great houses since their conditioning rendered them incapable of killing anyone, as seen with Dr. Wellington Yue in the first Dune movie. However, the Harkonnens shattered Yue's conditioning by exploiting his wife as leverage alongside the tortures he suffered at the hands of the Harkonnen Mentats. This broke the poor doctor's mind, such that anyone would lose their conditioning under those circumstances. Nazir's conclusions regarding the spontaneous combustion remain unclear, and she needs to run more tests. Soon, we'll learn the results and how Desmon managed to orchestrate this assassination while being so far from the school. This highlights the severity of the situation. The contrast between Tula and Valya is striking. Valya is more concerned with her plans for the Emperor's family, involving the deceased sister Kasha and the genetic breeding program. She will depart immediately for Seleucia Secundus to ensure Inez remains part of her schemes. Tula, on the other hand, is the only one concerned with the sister Kasha's corpse and what might have killed her. One sister looks to the future, while the other lingers in the past, grieving those who are gone. Tula offers to lead the Sisterhood in the absence of the Mother Superior, and Valya hesitates briefly before agreeing. The device Valya holds is the key to the chamber housing the highly secretive genetic breeding program. Valya knows her sister is more emotional and empathetic, which makes her hesitant to entrust her with such an important responsibility. However, in the end, she gives Tula the keys, trusting her as her sister despite everything they've been through. The table next to Tula holds a board resembling a chess set. This is Cheops, a 9-level pyramid-shaped chess game with kings and queens. It's a game we've seen in Dune, Part 2, and the 2003 miniseries Children of Dune. As you might expect, the design varies depending on the artistic vision of the series or film, but since we're 10,000 years in the past, this is a very primitive version. Valya is acutely aware of the dangers of awakening the genetic memory of Raquela's great-great-granddaughter. As we know, Raquela's daughter, Dorothea, was brutally murdered by Valya, who then assumed leadership of the Sisterhood. This event is one of many secrets hidden in the genetic legacy that only a select few can access. As I mentioned in my first analysis, Valya believes the ends justify the means, even if it risks Laila discovering what happened. To Valya, it's better to take that risk than to let the Tiran Arafel destroys the Sisterhood. Valya enlists the help of an acolyte to monitor and connect with the princess, choosing none other than Theodosia. Theodosia, seen in the library searching for a book, stands before a display case containing glass vessels similar to those used by the Freemen and their Reverend Mothers in Dune Part 2. To the right, though not entirely clear, there might be a fully exposed sandworm tooth. Remember, the Fremen's crysknives were crafted from sandworm teeth, making them deadly weapons essential for a planet where the sand ruins every weapon or firearm. Theodosia harbors hidden circumstances that both Tula and Valya know, but that remain unknown to us. Valya seeks her out because she is her favorite acolyte, strong, resolute, and likely to become an excellent Reverend Mother. This sheds light on the previous episode's conversation, where we learned Theodosia was Valya's favorite and had been taken in by the Sisterhood because she had nowhere else to go. Adding to this, the knife Theodosia played with in the first episode closely resembles the one the princess uses. Perhaps Theodosia once lived on Seleucia Secundus and committed a crime that forced her to flee to the Sisterhood for protection or self-defense. Only time will tell. For now, her bond with Inez will be forged through her tasks, as Theodosia must explain Sister Kasha's death with the limited information available. As an acolyte, she will provide only what everyone knows, not the absolute truth. The arrival at Seleucia Secundus' spaceport is visually stunning and magnificent. The hyperspace travel of the Spacing Guild is breathtaking, and the spaceport, with its people, costumes, and backgrounds, is truly incredible. The series really is visually outstanding. Valya personally oversees the Emperor and the leader of House Riches, leaving Theodosia to handle the princess. Being a skilled strategist, Valya doesn't announce her arrival, catching everyone off guard and preventing them from devising plans beyond her control. This ensures everything remains under her command. Due to the incompetence of Constantine, the House Riches send her daughter to take the information from him, in an explicit sexual scene, because you know we are at HBO. It's something that shouldn't surprise anyone due in this universe. The sex has been always a way to reach something. At the movies, we've seen how Jessica Atreides or Lady Margot, how the Sisterhood uses seduction and sex as a piece of chess, like the Kwisatz Haderach. Jessica, as we know, due her love with Leto Atreides, gave birth to Paul Atreides against the Sisterhood desires, because she needed to give birth to a girl and not a boy. How we know Paul was born before the time meant to be. Lady Margot, as we know, used Fide, Harkonnen, to continue with the breeding program plans to stop Paul Atreides. We see how Riches blackmails the Emperor with his space fleet. Remember that Haviko needs his valuable fleet to stabilize the attacks on Arrakis. Atreides knows that the Emperor needs him. That's why he's really disrespectful to the Emperor. At the entrance, Valia creates an absolute silence because we know that she transmits respect in abundance. The first thing she does is to offer her condolences to the Rashi's family are of pure protocol. Studying later the Emperor himself to see if he's lying or not about the suspect in Pruitt's murder, clearly the Emperor is lying, but Atreides doesn't know that. However, the two Bene Gesserit do. I love the use of signals. Honestly, it's incredible how imposing everything looks at the political level. The truth is, the Bene Gesserit are the ones truly pulling the strings behind the scenes in the palace. Valia orders the sister that is advising Atreides to take him out of the room because the situation is spiraling out of control, and she needs to address it with clarity and without interruptions in front of the Emperor. I love how Constantino says that Atreides' tongue should be cut out for his insolence. Well, he really has a tongue larger than a sandworm's appetite at an all-you-can-eat spice buffet. Valia knows the Emperor's lies and his good intentions of not revealing he has a suspect of the murder to prevent an all-out war across the multi-galactic empire. The thing is, if Prince Pruitt has died the same way as Kasha, there's a connection to unravel here. This is an opportunity that Natalia could use to get closer to the Emperor, whose relationship we know was in a bad place, as we saw in the first episode. And now, without sisters lurking around the palace, it has improved quite a lot. If it weren't for Natalia, Haviko would have prevented Valia from visiting Desmon in prison, and he would have already executed Desmon if his wife hadn't suggested using him to their advantage instead of to appease the enemy. In this case, Atreides. Natalia using the term Shai Hulud seems amusing and funny, as it implies she's a true Fremen using the Fremen tongue to refer to the sandworms. I don't know if this is just a reference or if Natalia is well versed in galactic history. Shai Hulud is the life giver of the desert of Arrakis, the so-called grandfather of the desert, a deity the Fremen both revere and fear at the same time. Perhaps Natalia read a holobook about the galaxy and that's it, but honestly, it surprised me. Before visiting Desmon, Valia needs to ensure that Inez receives the news of Sister Kasha's death from her and no one else. Here, we witness a panic attack from the princess, which she manages to control thanks to prior training from the sister Kasha. Let's remember that the princess was supposed to join the Bene Gesserit school, and she had taught her quite a few things beforehand. This explains why she can control her impulses and nerves like a true sister. Remember, that fear kills the mind. Valia is pleased that her sister did a great job with the princess. After leaving her in Theodosia's hands, we move to the prison visit, which was impressive. First, because seeing the prison of Seleucus Secundus is incredible. The way they imprison their captives. Rather than confining them, they suspend them mid-air. We've seen these suspensors in the two Dune movies with Duncan Idaho during his fight against the Harkonnen and Sardaukar during the sneak attack on Arrakis, and also by the Harkonnen Emperor who relies on them due to his immense body weight. Leaving a prisoner hanging mid-air puts them in a challenging position, not just for sleeping with their head dangling, but also for other human basic needs. And let's not even start with vertigo. Escape is impossible since deactivating the suspensors would make you plummet to your death. Here we see Desmon possessing certain abilities against which Valia cannot prevail, no matter what she claims. I love Valia's superior airs and how she believes Desmon is just an ordinary human. It turns out Desmon was born on the planet Balut, a slaver planet recovering from a devastating attack by machines during this time. That's why Valia tells Desmon it's no place for a child, given the horrible living conditions. Desmon is guided by faith and seems to assert that he is a soldier of the Emperor, whom he serves with unwavering loyalty. According to Valia, Desmon believes he's telling the truth, but deep down, she and we know he's lying. The most curious thing about Desmon is how he moves. Yes, I know Travis Fimmel is and will always be Ragnar Lothbrok. I also saw him in the series Raised by Wolves, where his appearance is quite similar to his look in Dune Prophecy. His acting style is unique, and I love that he maintains it in his characters. In this case, his portrayal resembles that of a robot. We'll see what or who Desmon really is, but the fact that he lacks blue eyes due to Arrakis' spice, or that he's immune not only to the voice, but also to any test the sisters subject him to, can only mean two things to me. Either he's a Tleilaxu, as I explained in my first video, They are genetically altered humans hated and shunned by everyone, or he's a robot with human skin. I strongly believe the hologram the Emperor saw was fake and manipulated. A thinking machine could have perfectly altered it to portray Desmon as a man swallowed by a worm who survived as if by a miracle. If he also has powers, this could imply he's some kind of chosen one. I think his powers might be linked to an ability to increase body temperature through, I don't know, maybe radioactive or heat waves. That's why his expression changes during the process and shows effort when he stops it. It would be strange for the Dune universe, which has always leaned on science and technology, to suddenly introduce magic. I say this because people might think the voice is a kind of Jedi-like force power, but it's not. The voice is a technique using vocal cords to enthrall whoever hears it, like instant psychological manipulation. Nothing magical. The way they process poisons, as seen in the 2 Dune movies, is also the result of years of training to control the body at every level. In this scene, the Emperor takes 2 very clear stances. The first one is that Desmon clearly wants the Bene Gesserit to be seen as enemies and conspirators against the Empire, since Sister Kasha advised Haviko to join the Riche's house despite him feeling uneasy about it. Valya, on the other hand, wants the Emperor to see this incident as connected and not random. She wants Desmon to be seen as a murder, as a walking threat. But no matter what Valya claims, she has completely lost, as Desmon's strategy is undoubtedly surprising. He doesn't hide. He prefers to be truthful to prove to Haviko that he's better than the Bene Gesserit, who clearly never tell the truth to anyone. Well, the sisters devoted to the truth certainly aren't, given they are always lying. Here, I'd like to clarify the Bene Gesserit order hierarchy for those who might be confused. Because between superior mothers, reverend mothers, sisters, and acolytes, it's easy to get lost. The hierarchy of the Bene Gesserit is as follows. The Mother Superior is clearly the leader, the one who maintains control, order, and discipline among her followers. She weaves all the plans. As such, she is a reverend mother with many years of training behind her and has endured the agony of the poison that connects her to her genetic memory. We know that Valya, Tula, and Sister Kasha are among the few who have survived this trial. After the Mother Superior, we have the Reverend Mother, who acts as an advisor and counselor, as we've seen through characters like Sister Kasha. Next, there are the Truth-Sayers, who serve as judges in any dispute due to their ability to discern who is lying and who is not, acting as an objective figure in conflicts. Then comes the Sisters, who fulfill their role as agents, concubines, or potential wives, a role we saw in this episode through Michaela, who is manipulating the rebellion. Finally, there are the Acolytes, the apprentices who must pass various trials to determine their role within the school and the galaxy. I've skipped over several roles since the Order has not yet grown or professionalized to the same level we saw in the Dune films, as many years still need to pass and numerous important positions will arise, which we will discuss when the time comes. I love that Valya speaks with the Reverend Mother of Duke Riches in a cone of silence. This is something we already saw in the Dune films and serves exactly as its name suggests, to ensure that no one can hear what is spoken within its radius, keeping the conversation entirely private. Valya needs her Reverend Mother to bring the Duke under control because maintaining spice production on Arrakis depends on Riches' fleet. Without that fleet, House Carino cannot maintain its position of power within the Landsraad. If it loses its position as Emperor, the Great Houses will seize complete power, and the plan to unite Inez with someone genetically viable for their breeding program will fall apart. The problem is that Duke Riches, still deeply affected by the death of his son, is much harder to manipulate. The Landsraad is the organization that represents all the Great Houses during the days of the Empire, and is overseen by the Emperor. There, alliances, business deals, and agreements between the great houses are formalized, along with judicial procedures. The spice monopoly, as mentioned in the first episode, continues to frustrate people throughout the galaxy. As we see, it has sparked a rebellion that includes none other than Paul Atreides, the Emperor's swordmaster. This rebellion seeks to dismantle the power of the great houses to redistribute wealth among the poorest. Paul Atreides' involvement was one of the episode's most surprising twists, which I loved. Kieran, as we see, scans the palace structure so that the rebellion can infiltrate and deal with the Emperor, because without an Emperor, there is no leader, and without a leader, chaos reigns. Apparently, it's better to have a war than for people to starve and not see a single coin of the spice that we know is traded among the great houses. This is why a member of the rebellion mentions the Landsrod, as the great houses also seek to seize power over Arrakis and its wealth. Remember, whoever controls the spice controls everything. It seems that the profits from a shipment of Arrakis for the rebellion's coffers have diminished because not everyone sympathizes with the cause of the rebellion. This is because some people must live well enough to reject a war that, in this case, doesn't interest them. Evidently, part of that money has gone toward bribes, silences, and many other tolls. The fact that Michaela is a sister was also unexpected, as Kieran is being manipulated for her convenience. This explains why, in the previous episode, she asked Kieran if everything was fine since his relationship with the princess is not good for the cause. It raises many doubts about where his loyalty lies. Love, my friends, is more dangerous than anything else in the world. Believe me. No matter how much Kieran swears loyalty to the rebellion's cause and promises to stay with them until the end, put a knife to the princess's neck, and we'll see how he reacts. I say this because in the scene where Kieran finds the princess fighting, we have the classic sexual scene with great chemistry and romantic tension, where the princess tries to deal with her frustration and pain over Sister Kasha's death by exercising to manage her emotions. Exercising while angry sometimes helps you perform better. Trust me, we've all experienced it. The princess tells Kieran that when she was a child, during the rebellion of the Broken Chain, a distant moon, where the Emperor had to suppress an uprising, she and her brother Constantine were kidnapped with the Emperor's tacit approval. This political move was about showing no weakness to anyone, even if it meant your own daughter being kidnapped and killed. With no weakness in sight, the rebellion ended because nothing could harm the Emperor. If he doesn't care about his daughter, imagine how far he can go. The fact that Inez understands that both she and Kieran are mere pawns in a game that others are playing is fascinating because it significantly raises my interest in the princess. I believe she is an incredibly intriguing character who will inevitably complicate things with Kieran and their bond. This is evident because anyone watching this scene knows that no matter how much the princess tries to keep the knife away from Kieran, they've crossed the line of mutual respect. This is bound to end in a tragic love story. Kieran, no matter how much he claims loyalty to the cause, clearly cares for the princess, as seen in the kiss he gives her, right in the palace where anyone could see them. This is very different from the discreet place in the first episode. The scene with Michaela and Valia confirms that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood operates in the shadows everywhere. Empowering the great houses helps maintain order, while the rebellions keep that power in check to avoid extreme imbalances. The scales will tilt in favor of whatever benefits the Bene Gesserit the most. The attack on Arrakis was ordered by Valia herself so that the Emperor would need the fleet of Riches, ensuring the wedding that would secure the genetic lineage they seek so desperately. Valia is willing to sacrifice an entire rebel cell to provide the Emperor with a culprit for the attack and remind him how much he needs the Bene Gesserit in such turbulent times. However, the Emperor's trust in the Bene Gesserit is currently hanging by a thread. Michaela turning out to be Bene Gesserit was an unexpected twist, just like Kieran's ties to the rebellion. What I didn't see coming was Michaela betraying Kieran, whose loyalty she questioned just one scene prior. For the Sisterhood, anything is okay. The Game of Thrones style of this series is captivating and very well executed. The final scene with Desmon and Valia was also intense. Desmon has solidified his position in the court and delivers a harsh dismissal to the Reverend Mother on behalf of the Emperor. Not even the Emperor wanted to receive Valia, showing his trust in the Bene Gesserit is almost non-existent. This scene is masterfully executed on every level, much like the like. You can leave on the video or the subscription if you're new to the channel, where I'll be analyzing everything from Dune and beyond. Desmon dismisses Valia and tells her he will erase the Bene Gesserit from the galaxy, claiming it's for the good of the Empire. The question is, why is it best for the Empire? What interest does Desmon have in eliminating the Sisterhood? Valia tells him she's not afraid and uses the voice against him, giving him the same command Dorothea was given in the first episode. At the end, to everyone's surprise, Desmon resists the voice, showing that he has discovered Valya's greatest fear. Her fear isn't being ignored, but being heard and disregarded. Valya's greatest weakness is having no control despite commanding and directing everything. Emily Watson's performance is incredible, capturing the suppression of emotions and her departure from the room upon realizing they've struck a nerve, her ego. It's shocking how Desmon could resist the voice of a Reverend Mother, even though we still don't know his power's origin, as no one in Dune history has resisted it so easily. Only with intense training and conditioning can someone resist, as seen with Paul Atreides, Gurney Halleck, or Duncan Idaho. Desmon avoiding the power of the voice can only mean one thing. He is a thinking machine, a cyborg, or worse, a member of the Bane Tleilax, genetically modified humans which their hierarchy and faith were truly strict. Their culture is based on science and the language of God as a tool to elevate the impure through genetic modification. Alternatively, Desmon could be a Gola, a clone created from the DNA of someone who has died, as I explained in my first video. This would explain why Desmon isn't affected by the voice. He may have been genetically modified when cloned. Surviving a sandworm, I'll tell you, is impossible. So, the hologram the Emperor sees has definitely been manipulated 100%. This way, you make the Emperor believe you're special, and with the two near impossible deaths of the Emperor's own Reverend Mother and the future heir of the Empire, I think it's pretty clear that this kind of power hides something we don't yet know. But it clearly has to do with genetics and not magic. Maybe Desmon has simply received training to resist the voice, and that's it. Let's remember that during this historical period, the voice is still very underdeveloped and in the process of improvement, as it's 10,000 years before the first Dune movie, where everything was much more refined. The fact that he's a machine clearly implies that the voice doesn't affect him because he has no feelings or thinking brain like a human. Speaking of Desmon, I loved that his way of earning the Emperor's trust is by telling the truth. Haviko is surprised to discover that Desmon took literally that Pruett had to die and that the wedding shouldn't happen because he suspected things. As is logical, he orders Desmon to be locked up until he can figure out who he's really serving and what his true intentions are. It seems perfectly normal that after seeing how Desmon outmaneuvers even the Reverend Mother, the Emperor and Natalia decide to trust him much more, especially because Desmon claims loyalty to the Empire, while Valya is clearly loyal only to what suits her. I repeat, neither Natalia nor Haviko like this wedding. If the wedding was suggested by the sister Kasha, a Reverend Mother, then there you have the seed of manipulation and distrust planted. Since there's a lot of unrest and little certainty about what's happening, Desmon takes advantage of this to become a weapon at the Emperor's service. By offering such power to someone in such a desperate situation as Haviko, he has won his loyalty. Haviko lets Rachis live because he's more valuable alive than dead. Showing him clemency will set an example for the other great houses who will see how the Emperor commands a man capable of killing with unimaginable, terrible, and so far unstoppable power. This way, Haviko kills two birds with one stone. On the one hand, he secures Rachis' fleet for the Arrakis incursions, ensuring his position on the planet and in the Landsrod. And on the other hand, he shuts Rachis up by nullifying any kind of threat or future breach of contract, demonstrating that it could end much worse than just death. All of this is also messing up the Bene Gesserit's plan. As with this fleet, their own incursions on Arrakis will be affected. The fact that Rachis no longer has any power with the Emperor is crippling their genetic program. What this shows us is the great Tula that Paul Atreides had, who was ahead of the game, sweating through both front and back what is the spice which she threatened to destroy in Dune Part 2. Remember, whoever controls the spice controls everything, and only someone willing to destroy something has absolute control. We'll see how far Desmon is willing to go and what his intentions are. But what I want to clarify is that Lilia's prophecy refers to Desmon and says the following. The key to the reckoning is one born twice, once in blood, once in spice, a revenant full of scars, a weapon born of war, on a path too short. Clearly, this refers to Desmon, who we know was born twice, once naturally and the other spiritually, surviving the sandworm. He was born of blood naturally and born by spice, having survived a sandworm, which we know produces spice. A revenant full of scars refers to him being a soldier of war filled with wounds from having fought for the Empire. A revenant could refer to the fact that since he was dead and came back to life, he's like a ghost. He was reborn. A weapon born of war on a very short path could refer to what I mentioned before. Desmon is a machine, a cyborg created by the great omnious mind or its most loyal digital servant, Erasmus. These are just theories. Clearly, Desmon has a motivation against the Bene Gesserit because they're the only ones who could perhaps stop him and tell the Emperor the truth. They're the only ones who could, with their plan, create the Kwisatz Haderach, who we know will overpower any other power in the universe, especially because of prescience. The machines cannot manipulate the Emperor if behind him are such intelligent and capable people. Remember, the great schools emerged during the war against the machines, so it would make sense that the machines, in some way, would want to destroy all those schools, trying to create humans capable of replacing them. I mention this because the Suk are the doctors of the galaxy, the Mentats the mathematicians and analysts, the human calculators, and the Bene Gesserit are those who manipulate and plan long-term strategies. Even so, as I've already said, prophecies are clearly subjective and open to unique, non-transferable interpretations. I believe this prophecy refers to one thing, but you might believe something completely different, just as Valya or Tula could interpret it however they like. For example, Valya interpreted the Tiran Arafel as something short-term, but we know from the books that it's actually something very, very long-term. We'll have to see how all of this unfolds. The subplot involving Tula and Laila has been incredibly interesting. How genetic memory is addressed and the pink poison. I loved it. The series expands the lore in such a spectacular way with artistic liberties that are absolutely marvelous. Tula's favorite acolyte is Laila, and as her acolyte, she's developed a certain affection that prevents her from forcing Laila to make a decision that must be entirely her own. There's a conversation where Laila tells Tula that she feels like her own mother, that she's always tried to fake it because of the affection between them. Be careful here. If this were Valya, it wouldn't be the same, as we've seen with the Odyssea, where Valya didn't give her more options to accompany her. In contrast, Tula allows Laila to process all this information and decide for herself without feeling pressured, because you get more with honey than with vinegar, as my grandmother used to say. The Sisterhood above all, not the sisters, but the school and its knowledge, not its habitants. This is evident in the character of Jen, who in this episode actually matters and contributes far more interesting things than in the first episode. She has a totally anti-system vision, which generates doubts in a Laila who needs to clear her mind right now. To Jen, the Sisterhood is nothing more than another system that uses, manipulates, and exploits people as it pleases. We'll see how this character ends, because if she doesn't understand the common cause of the Bene Gesserit, she might end up being dead weight that needs to be discarded. Emily, on the other hand, is the most devout acolyte, which we understand much better with her conversation with Laila. In it, she mentions that her family fought alongside Serena Butler in the Battle of Corrin. Emmeline's family sacrificed themselves to allow the atomic bombs to be launched and destroy the thinking machines. Their sacrifice bought the valuable time needed to launch those bombs. I'd like to clarify here that the atomics were banned for their destructive power and to protect humanity itself, a lesson learned over time. Reyna Butler was the founder of the cult Serena in honor of Serena the instigator of the Butlerian jihad against the thinking machines. Reyna was a critical figure at the end of the war, initiating the Great Purge against the machines and advanced technologies, which in some cases were essential for human survival. I mention this because it's very connected to Emily's storyline. Sometimes we have to make enormous sacrifices for a greater good, even if it's long-term. Human life is sacred, and the act of self-sacrifice is incredibly significant. That's why Laila ultimately submits to the Agony test, because she knows that even if she doesn't survive, it's better to do it for the cause of the Sisterhood than to be a coward. She clearly knows that Tula and Valya are using her, but as the only one capable of speaking to her great-great-grandmother Raquela, the first Reverend Mother we saw die in the first episode, There aren't many other options, especially when Valia herself believes that Tyr and Arafel is closer than ever. The relationship between Laila and Tula was fantastic. The bond between them feels enormous. Surely, we'll learn more about that gift Tula gave Laila in a flashback. We can imagine it might be some kind of whale tooth from Tula's home planet, Lankyville. Laila's doubts are captured beautifully in this scene where the actress has done an outstanding job. At one point, we see Tula moving back and forth, mentioning that Laila will find herself engulfed in enormous darkness and must seek the light on the other side. It's impressive how Tula tells her acolyte that her mother died in childbirth. But later, we find out this is a lie, as during the process of assimilating the poison, the Agony, Laila's mother is not present. The drama is intense because if Tula lied to her acolyte, despite being one of the most empathetic Reverend Mothers, Laila will trust no one, and if she becomes a Reverend Mother, watch out. It remains to be seen whether she will still be herself. After falling into the hands of her grandmother Dorothea, the imagery in this scene makes it clear that Laila's consciousness might have been destroyed by her entire legacy, which is basically consuming her. Now, there may be only an empty shell, perhaps possessed by Dorothea for her personal revenge and convenience. Regarding the pink poison, I want to clarify that it is very different from the Freeman water of life. Although the bluish effect is the same, it's simply used to illustrate the mixture of the poison with the molecules of the person who will assimilate it. The Freeman water of life is a much purer and more refined poison, directly extracted from a sandworm. The pink poison, on the other hand, is a manual preparation that, as we see, requires several ingredients to be mixed. I love that the area where these herbs are harvested has the shape of an eye, which is ironic since the poison is assimilated through the eyes. And as I mentioned earlier, eyes are significant in this series because, in this case, they allow you to see your family legacy. I want to clarify that for women, only the female genetic memory is unlocked. What was special about the Kwisatz Haderach and what happened to Paul Atreides is that the Water of Life unlocked all his memories, male and female. That's something that only happens with men. The problem is that this vast amount of knowledge is so immense and abyssal that no man has survived the process. That's why the genetic breeding program seeks the chosen one, because they will see it all. Laila's sequence within her memory was astonishing. The artistic liberty they've taken here is brutal. To connect with her genetic heritage, Laila sees a kind of tomb filled with the skulls of all her predecessors. I love this because, in the end, she's looking so far back into her past that all she finds is death and darkness. Additionally, since we're 10,000 years before Paul Atreides, her poison assimilation is very different from what Jessica experiences, for example. Here, we see a mob of hooded, zombified women where Laila could be lost forever. Has Laila survived? Did she die in the process? The end of the episode doesn't make this clear, leaving us with two options, and here I'd like to remind everyone to avoid spoilers, as there might be people who haven't seen the teasers or trailers yet. Path 1 implies that Laila has died. She couldn't process the poison, and, as we see in the eye shot, has succumbed to her genetic legacy. Path 2 implies she has survived but is still processing the poison. I mention this because Jessica needed a few days to process everything due to her training with the Sisterhood. Paul Atreides needed several weeks in the books and a few days in the movie to assimilate it. We'll see if Laila has become one of the youngest Reverend Mothers we know. That's it for now, everyone. This has been my analysis of Episode 2 of Dune Prophecy. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't like, don't throw me to the lions. And with that, I say goodbye, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Because, of course, I'll see you in the next one.